No one knows the history of, for example, about Malik Faisal, right? I mean, he has definitely wronged. He was very brutal inside of his regime. I mean, he was not someone that was like a hands off, but everybody remembers him for his stance on Palestine. Yeah. Everybody does. There's nothing. That's one thing that nobody can take for him. That when it came to that issue, that he was absolute and uncompromising that issue, and that's what immortalized him.
Do you remember the conversation that happened between him and the U.S. president?
I don't recall it.
Can go back to. Do you remember what that was? You remember what that conversation was between Malik Faisal and that?
Well, no, are you talking about when he said, "You guys can't live without oil. We came from the desert."
Yeah, but no. What his stance on Palestine also. Wasn't there some kind of.
There's something about how can I negotiate with them, or anyways. Yeah. But the point being though is that. Okay, no. It was earlier than that. It was not Malik Faisal. It was King Saud in the beginning, where he was approached by it, and he said, "Wait a minute. So you have this population that was in Europe, that was I think it was I forgot exactly, but anyways, It was you have this population in Europe that was oppressed in Europe, and then you want to send them to Palestine." So he responded very, very clearly, like, well, why should the Palestinians have to deal with this issue? Like, it seems to be a European problem. It doesn't seem to be a Middle Eastern problem. Like, I don't know why the Palestinians have to be then forced to give up land. And he was very clear, but I think that was a time when things were much more simplistic, right? But the point being is, regardless of all of that, what I wanted to say was that King Faisal had his errors and definitely had his flaws. But people are willing to overlook that. Because when it came, like push come to shove, with the issue of Palestine and pan-Islamism, his position was very clear. And so people can then overlook the small mistakes. Or everything else seems inconsequential when you have that attitude, right? And I think that's what people fail to realize, that we're not expecting like perfection from our leaders. We know Allah is the only one who's perfect. There are going to be mistakes. We see even mistakes in some of the mistakes that some of the early generation made in terms of decisions and rulings they made, but it doesn't stain them because we know that no one's perfect. However, what we focus on is what was their attitude, what was their mission. Was it something that was to help Islam progress and move forward and the ummah itself, or was it something that was going to divide and take away the ummah from its goal, right? So I think even if the people can feel that someone is working towards the benefit of the ummah, they can excuse the shortcomings that they have.
I don't know if you remember.
Look, not every country has the capability to go to war against the United States and Israel. Because if you do go to war against Israel, you're going to war against the United States. Let's be clear about that. Yeah. But you can do some other things. And people like King Faisal, they did an oil embargo, and he also created the OIC as well. Just as even though we know the OIC is completely ineffective and stuff, but it was a response to bringing Muslim countries together and getting them to the table so that they can address important issues that are related to Muslims in general.
Yeah, so, and speaking of that event, the oil embargo, because Henry Kissinger died recently, right? And so remember the funny event there where he went to go see King Faisal, and he's like, because the embargo was so bad, he was like, yo, can you at least refill my plane so I can go back to America? And the joke he made to him, because that's how tight it got in America. Actually, the oil embargo triggered, people don't realize this, but that triggered a whole shift in the American auto market. Because Americans traditionally had big, giant V8s that had steel, tough, like double reinforced. They were heavy cars. They were like, as we talk about in the past, but they had to find ways to reduce weight. They dropped the engine size from V8s to 6 cylinders. That's when even the Honda Civic, Toyota Corolla became more popular because the oil crisis. People didn't want to spend money on oil. It was too expensive. They wanted things that were more economical. So even till now, the effect that King Faisal, of that collective, the Muslim countries that did that, the effect of that is still present today. It changed the auto market forever. Yeah.
The adoption of 6 cylinders and 4 cylinders?
I mean, Americans traditionally had V8s, big V8s, right? They had big muscle cars, like gas guzzlers, and heavy bodies that would require more horsepower and whatever it was, right? But that all had to change because they had to find a way to be more efficient, right? Things like that. So, but that, I mean, I'm not saying it's only because of what King Faisal did, but certainly, pushed it forward.